What is up, everybody? This is Anthony with VR Roundtable. What is going on? This is episode 119 of our show. We are back this week, and you know what? There's a lot of excitement on the dock today. We, of course, will have talk about Valve Index coming up immediately, basically. We're also going to talk about everything that went on with PlayStation this week, a lot of other news stories as well, lots of Oculus Quest stuff to get into. But basically, why don't we go to the crew and see what's going on first? Chris, I understand that you actually attended PAX East and you saw some pretty incredible things. What is it like to be back off of that? And were the crowds like, were you waiting in like 3-hour lines and stuff?
Yeah, PAX was pretty rough. Like I only went Thursday because I figured that'd be the least busy day to go. And I waited like 3.5 hours to try Rift S, but I'd say it was worth it. After that, I was like, I have a podcast. Can I try some other stuff? They're like, yeah, okay, here you go. You can try Quest a few times and Rift S a few times. So thankfully, I got a good impression of all of them. So I'm happy about that. But it was a lot. I'm still very tired from PAX.
Hey, one other question. Sometimes when you're waiting in these 3-hour lines, you can actually have some really interesting discussions with like people that are right in front of you or right behind you. Did anything like that happen? Any kind of little interesting discussions you got into?
Kind of. It sucks because it's PAX, so it's a bunch of like general consumers or people walking by. They're like, "Wow, VR's not ready yet. Let's not get in this line." I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, what are you doing?" And then the guy behind me was like, how's the Rift compared to Vive? And I got to tell him about my experience with that. So, more consumer oriented, but still people excited about VR. So that was good.
It'd be a cool idea. What you're talking about right there is if you had like a little hidden camera just near the VR area with just random people walking by, just to hear random people's comments about, oh my God, there's VR. I can't believe they're still doing that, or whatever kind of crazy comments you might hear. Yeah. But let's turn it over to Steve. What is going on, Steve? You got a brand new chair that is so awesome behind you.
It's the same chair I've had. I had a birthday yesterday. I turned 26. I had a pretty good birthday. I went to Purdue, so my alma mater is the Purdue Boilermakers, and NCAA tournaments going on. We had the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 played here in Louisville, and Purdue was in. So I went to the Elite 8 game here in our arena, and then I went to the Sweet 16 game the other day, and then I went to the Elite 8 game. They didn't win last night, so I kind of didn't get to play a lot of the games. All my VR time went to watching college basketball, but my throat might be a little sore from yelling, but I had a good time, good birthday. The only thing that would have made it better is if they had won.
Cool. Gary, so we've heard that you've sold your Rift. No, I'm just kidding. What's going on over Yeah. What's going on over there in the UK, Gary? I guess you guys are back on the proper time frame, right? And today's Mother's Day over there as well. Did you get some flowers?
Yeah, we were on the incorrect time for a couple of weeks there, weren't we? But we're back on schedule now. Yeah, it's Mother's Day over here, so I didn't realise that when I said I'd be on this week's show, and yeah, I think my wife's okay. She's fine with it. She's got some good gifts. But we've got a fair few people watching live, and I just wanted to encourage people to sort of go over to that like button, give that like button a little tickle, a little caress, and then smash it down. Basically, what I'm saying is, just click on the like button if you like this video. That would be great. Nothing really other than that to say. Just very excited to talk about all this VR news this week.
Yeah, buddy. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and start it off? And we're going to start off with the biggest story of the week, maybe the biggest story of the year for VR gaming. And this last couple of weeks, what is going on here, guys? Because it is a tumultuous kind of situation that is going on in the VR gaming industry. Just like the last 10, 12 days, so much stuff is going on. It's crazy. And Friday night, a bomb was dropped on the proverbial VR gaming industry with the Valve Index. And I can tell you that I was working on something and I got a message from somebody and they're like, Valve Index. I'm like, what? Valve what? And I clicked on this little link and I saw a picture and I was like, what? But then I was like, wait, this is fake. This is not real. And then the guy that I was talking to was like, no, this is on Valve's website. And I clicked on it and it was like, oh, yeah, it actually is on Valve's website. And then I thought, wait a minute, somebody hacked Valve's website. This can't be real. But it actually is real. There is something called the Valve Index. And we are going to find out a lot more about this, hopefully very soon. And a possible release in May 2019. Lots of details. Well, actually, we don't have much details. We don't have hardly any details other than the image that is out there. But what we do have is speculation aplenty. We've got a lot of speculation about everything that's going to go on with this. And why don't we go ahead and just jump right into it? So what we do know about this thing so far is what we've seen in the image. We know that something is happening in May 2019. We're hoping it's the actual release of the unit, but it could potentially be an info dump of everything about the unit. Maybe it comes a little bit later this year. Still not 100% sure about that. We're hoping, we would love it to arrive in May 2019. Now, what else can we see by the image that is out there? We can see that there are 2 cameras on it, at least 2. They're at towards the bottom of the headset, very similar to the leaked pictures that came out quite some time ago. So it's kind of proven that that leak was basically legit. That is kind of the headset that we're getting here, although we don't know how early those images were and how many changes may have come to this headset. The other thing that we see right there in the front is it looks like you got an IPD slider, and it seems to be very prominently placed in this picture. I don't think that was a complete and utter accident there. Of course, Palmer Luckey tweeted out a picture not too long after this arrived with a circle around a certain area, kind of throwing a little shade Oculus's way for the lack of IPD adjustment on the Rift S. So we're assuming that is a legit IPD adjustment and not like a volume up and down slider. There's another button that's under there. We do believe there are sensors that appear to be visible when you kind of brighten the image. Also, there seems to be an interesting kind of shield or plastic glass covering over part of the headset. Just, oh man, I don't even know what to say here. So why don't we go ahead and kick it around the round table. And Gary, I'll start off with you. Where were you when Kennedy got shot? No, where were you when you first found out about the Valve Index? Did you believe it was real? Did you look at the calendar and say, man, April 1st is like really close? What's going on here?
Yeah, no, it's just like I just cruised the subreddits and stuff like that all day, basically on and off. And yeah, it just popped up there. So yeah, it was a big deal, actually. It's there's a lot to say on this. So the image itself, I think it validates. I don't think any of us really predicted that the leaked images that we got last year were anything other than genuine, and this sort of confirms it, because these 2 very wide cameras, very large cameras on the headset sort of confirm it's the same thing. The front of it is sort of curved in a way that would imply a curved screen. Somebody did mention in the chat earlier, before we started the show, that behind that curved plate you have a separate section with the ventilation area, and then behind that you have a flat printed circuit board. So the chance of it actually being a curved screen are probably not that high when you take that into context as well. Because originally when you see that curved front, it does sort of make that seem to be the case. I'm sure more people will have some comments on that, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. But yeah, this has been a great week for VR, and this is definitely a surprise. They did say we expected some kind of announcement, or not necessarily expected, but we hoped for some kind of announcement on the GDC week. That didn't turn out to be the case, but they did say that there will be some news coming very soon, and obviously that's turned out to be true. Yeah, really excited with this news.
Yeah, normally you hear very soon from someone at Valve, and that could translate to like 9 months. And it actually was very soon. It was kind of crazy. Chris, so you were at GDC the day before this thing hit, and no one had any idea of anything. I mean, this caught everybody off guard. There was no leak as far as I know. Well, you know what? We can talk a little bit later about there was a GDC thing, some YouTubers, and either that was a very masterful prank that turned out great for them with this announcement, or maybe there is some truth to some of the stuff they talked about. We can talk about that a little bit later. But Chris, you were just at GDC, you were trying this new stuff, and then the next day, bam, chaos in the VR gaming industry.
Yeah, I know you meant PAX. Just want to clarify. I was
Oh,
at PAX.
yeah.
You were at GDC. You're luckier than me, definitely. But yeah, this was good to see, because I was just still thinking like, man, is really no one gonna come out with another headset for this long? Is it just Oculus again? Like, the Vive is very old at this point. No one's gonna buy a Vive Pro anymore. So I was just kind of really confused. Like, there's no place for competition right now. But thankfully, Valve was like, nah, there is competition again, which is good. We'll have to see how much it costs. I'm guessing this will be more of that like enthusiast market that we're all looking for, especially with the FOV speculation. I don't remember what it is speculated to be, but definitely looks bigger than the Rift or the Rift S for sure. I think that is actually pretty exciting, because I wanted a Pimax, but they're too much money. Hopefully, if this thing is like $600 or $500, like that could entice me a lot. Hopefully, this also alludes to the fact that Knuckles will release at the same time. Like, let's really hope on that. Like, if just a headset came out, I'd be pretty disappointed. I don't know how they'd even do that. Like, they can't ship Vive ones with this. No one would buy it. But yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm really surprised it wasn't announced at GDC or anything. I think that would have been really good for them to announce it a little early, but this was good timing just based on that IPD thing. They're like, hey, let's leak a little image of our IPD adjustment at this time. So I think for once Valve did some timing right with this announcement.
Yeah. Okay. Steve, when it comes to Valve, like Chris said, why didn't they announce it at GDC? Why not announce it at PAX East? And we get this tease that kind of just came out there, but it's not a full unveiling. Like, obviously there's going to be more information that's going to come. We're going to find out more about this. Do you think that the information is, you can talk about your initial reactions, obviously, to all this news, but do you think more information is very, very imminent, like maybe next week, some more information, or do you think we might be waiting a little while to find out some additional information on the Valve Index?
Well, I hope there's more information coming soon, because otherwise we're just gonna all sit out in limbo and speculate and wonder and build up hype. I'll rely on all the people in chat and in the internet as a whole to tell me if Valve/Steam has anything scheduled between now and May where it would make sense for them to talk about this some more. As far as I know, nothing's scheduled, but at the same time, I don't really track a lot of developer type events that aren't the big ones like GDC and so forth. So I hope. My initial reactions, though, was I'm standing on a soccer field. My kid's at soccer practice, and my wife is there, and I'm looking at my phone. Of course, I'm wanting to read and gauge reactions to this, and my wife's like, look at your son. Look at your son. He's playing soccer. So it was kind of, I was torn between being a family man and trying to be a nerd. So I was very surprised. Like, it just seemed, it was late on a Friday here on the East Coast. I think it was like 6 p.m. in the day, something like that. It felt later. So it wasn't like, it was like outside of Eastern Standard Time business hours. And of course that means it was way outside of business hours over there in Europe. So, but within business hours, there on the West Coast. So, yeah, I was just surprised that it came late. I think it was beautifully timed for someone that can sit back and sort of look at the business analytics and just kind of all the mechanisms and thoughts that must go into the messaging and the PR departments of all these companies, and sit there and say they looked at the Oculus Rift S and said, okay, this thing was announced and here's what it is, and use that as to just flat out, shots fired across the bow, and with the what is got to be an IPD slider. I love stuff like that, and I just thought it was a beautiful bit of harmony, because I think Oculus made a big mistake, and it's interesting seeing Valve capitalize on it. And this also makes, going back to the history of the future, and because I wasn't paying attention to the market in real time back then, but this is the second time now Valve has kind of snipped in, sort of maybe unexpected, and stolen some of Oculus's thunder. This time, though, I'd say it's probably more warranted, and they deserved it.
Absolutely. Okay. So what I thought I would do here, like, there's a million different angles that we can cover from this, but what I thought I would do here is I've got you three, and there's a lot of burning questions that are out there about this. And I thought I could throw some different questions at you guys, and then we can just kind of hash it out a little bit. So Gary, the question I'm going to throw at you is, are we going to be playing this thing in the month of May? Like, are we actually going to receive a box from Valve in the month of May, and we're going to be playing the Valve Index? Is this happening? Like, in less than 60 days, imagine this, in less than 60 days, you could possibly be playing Portal VR. You could have Knuckles controllers on your hands. You could have a Valve Index on your head, and you could have brand new lighthouses in your room. I mean, is this happening in the month of May? What do you think?
Well, if you go by the wording, they're saying upgrade your experience May 2019, and that would imply that they're going to open this up for orders. One thing I wanted to mention, I don't know, because this sort of inspired me to go back. I don't know if everybody remembers the Gabe Newell and the Steam, the Valve VR team, the AMA they did back in 2017, and just go back and listen to what they were talking about then, and how they were creating hardware in order to fall in line with software that they were creating. Very much like, I think Gabe Newell even referenced Miyamoto in that, how he could create games based on hardware. So that implies they've been working on this for a long time. I can't see them doing a reveal of this without having a release date relatively close to the reveal. But there are a few questions with that, because could they have been pushed to reveal this a little bit earlier than they would have liked? Because of the Rift S, they didn't want everybody to jump onto the Rift S and then forego their product that they were working on. There's questions on that, but I think they've been working on this headset for such a long time, and I think they've been planning this launch. It makes sense for them to have a little teaser like this, then a reveal or a release in May for people to at least pre-order it. I don't know whether we'll actually get the headsets in May, but I think a pre-order would make sense from everything we've seen.
Okay. And Chris, the question I have for you, you're kind of our resident Oculus guy. And this news is great. I mean, what this news does to the overall VR gaming industry, it's really flipped the apple cart. It's turned it over. And we have a hardcore base of Oculus fans that are on the Oculus subreddit. I consider myself an Oculus fan. I wasn't like a Kickstarter backer or anything like that. And I kind of came to Oculus a little bit late, but I don't consider myself like one of the bread and butter Oculus fans. But all of them are kind of like chewing this information. And so many of us are itchy to buy a brand new headset, and everybody had mentally, well, a lot of people probably had mentally came to this idea that they're buying a Rift S. Like, most of us had our credit cards ready. We're ready to buy a Rift S. People were ready to buy it on the 28th, the rumor, right? People were ready to buy it right then. But then this happens. So if you're a hardcore Oculus supporter, is this enough to sway you? Are you going to wait and find out more information about this, or does that Oculus blood, it's in you and you got to stick with that Rift S? What's the thoughts there?
This is difficult because I tried the Rift S and I really was blown away by it. I felt, we can talk about it later. I feel like our podcast was too negative on how good it actually is. But it's not me being an Oculus fanboy. That's like totally subjective. This does, for all those enthusiasts, this really shakes things up, because enthusiasts want a next-gen headset, and I don't think Rift S is really a next-gen headset. It's improves on Rift in a lot of ways, I think, and like a lot of ways that are important to me, because I need to, be bringing my Rift around everywhere, and I can't be like taking out sensors out of the wall and everything. But this Index thing is probably the only choice we have for something more high-end that's not all the way to Pimax levels. So I think, it'll always have its market if this comes out and it's better than Rift S in a lot of ways, but it'll also be probably twice as expensive as Rift S maybe. So for hardcore, like, this is perfect. It really entices me, definitely, just to find out what it is, especially if Knuckles comes out with this headset. I think that would be huge. Hopefully Valve doesn't screw this up and there's actually some launch games or some really interesting stuff, because that's another area that Oculus is doing so well in. I played Stormlands. That game is so good. Like, they have some really good games coming out this year. So I think Valve's going to need to have some games too. Hopefully they've been funding some stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And Steve, thinking about Valve Index, one question I have is, what do you think about that name? And then after that, my question is, do you think that there is some key feature to this headset that we're going to be finding out about that maybe changes the game a little bit in VR? Maybe some feature we never even thought was possible, or some secret sauce. Obviously, it's pure speculation. We really don't know anything, but you can kind of like look at the name and maybe look at some older patents and some rumors or whatever innuendo that's out there about it. What do you think about the name, and do you think there's going to be a key feature that is a game changer?
Well, it would be hard to say if there's a key feature that's a game changer. This may just be an across-the-board improvement, more res, more fauve, knuckles, so controls improvement. It may just be, a good headset for the enthusiast. I think a lot of people are looking at that gap in the front, that spot, and assuming that there's some major feature associated with that. Now, there may be. I'm certainly not saying that there isn't. But I'm not sure that there's going to be something amazing. So with the name, first of all, a lot of people that I've seen kind of thought the name was lame. I like the name, and I'll say why, but, I certainly liked it better than Quest. Like, my initial reaction to Valve Index was far more positive than my initial reaction to Oculus Quest. So I'll just kind of throw that out there. Initially, my first thought, so the word index, in just happens to be in my world of manufacturing and automation and robots and stuff. It means when you index a machine, so you take apart a widget to the next step. It's kind of like an in-process evolution. And we also know Valve is manufacturing these themselves. So my initial thought was, okay, well, Index is sort of paying homage both to the manufacturing aspect, but also sort of in philosophy, taking the next step in a process. So it's kind of referring to an upgrade, taking the next step, in-kind evolution. We've then come out, a lot of people being the Reddit detectives and the internet sleuths that they are, we now have more information that I think is probably more likely. And I'm scrolling to it here. They basically have piecing back the patents, because Valve filed for patents last year and in 2017, I think, actually referring to Index and such. So it's sort of, this information's been out there, just the dots weren't connected. But the theory now is that the Index is referring to index of refraction, which is the measurement of the bending of a ray of light when passing from one medium into another. So taking that scientific sort of phrased definition, I'm thinking that's more likely where they pulled Index from. Then looking at the logo is tied into their patent where, let me pull the logo. Well, I can't pull it up easily. But basically the logo is a round circle adjacent to two half circles next to it, stacked. And they're basically based on the patent that the lens, and this is where this may be doing something different, that we may have stacked lenses, two separate lenses per eye. I don't know exactly, I'm not an optical engineer. I'm not just deep enough into that science to really pick apart what benefits that would have and what it is. But it may indicate that there's something new, something more going on than what we have, because most of our VR headsets use Fresnel lenses, and they do them all roughly the same way. There's differences in quality between the lenses, but the core principle behind them, between all the WMR, the Rift, the original Vive Pro, all that are basically sort of the same general approach. This may be a new optical approach, so that excites me quite a bit.
Yeah, so Gary, that's one of the rumors that is going around right now, is that when you look at the logo for Valve Index and then you also check the patents, there is this idea that it's possible we have like double Fresnel lenses for each eye, and that the idea is that this is going to significantly reduce like distortion and just different little anomalies in terms of like what we're seeing in our headsets. Do you think, like, assuming that they did this and maybe it created a higher cost for this headset, do you think that's the key thing to focus on? I mean, it's hard to say, obviously, we don't know how much improved it is, but when you think about what people are crying about out there, people want resolution, they want FOV, they want eye tracking and all of this stuff. It seems like lenses are kind of like an afterthought a little bit. Do you think this could be a game changer, though, in terms of like reducing distortion in these things?
I think you're right in that lenses are an afterthought for a lot of people, but I think they are really vital. These are the last point that the light hits before it enters your eye, and I think they need to be taken in that way. But again, as I mentioned on last week's show or the week before, it's difficult because it's difficult to quantify how much better this lens solution would be than a standard Fresnel lens or something like that. The fact is, so these stacked lenses that is in this patent seems to reduce distortion, chromatic aberration, and screen door effect as well. And if they can do that, for me, I mean, that's one of my main complaints in most VR headsets. And it's increasingly so. It's really strange to me. Like when I first got my Vive back in 2016, I just sort of accepted it, and yet I watched videos of UK Rifter, for example. UK Rifter got his CV1. He was a DK2 user, and when he got his CV1, one of the main things he was not quite happy about with the CV1 is the God rays, and he made numerous videos on the God rays about with that. And at that time, I sort of accepted them for what they were. I just thought this is just how VR is, and that's okay. But now they're increasingly a problem for me. So if Valve have some kind of technology where they can diminish any of these effects, then that's a benefit. The thing that's confusing to me is this name. So the Valve Index, are they basing the name on this one feature of the lenses? Because that appears to be the case. They're using these stacked lenses and they're basing the name of their product on this feature. So it's got to be a pretty good feature to do that, I would imagine. And that's the only thing that doesn't quite make sense for me. I wasn't blown away by the name when I first saw it, but if it does align with some kind of feature that is within this headset, then it just makes sense.
Yeah, and Chris, so when we're looking at what could be the magic sauce here with this headset, one of the things that a lot of people have been wondering about is we've seen the pictures from the factory floor, those leaked images, and there was an opening that was in the front of the headset there, and we weren't sure what that was, and obviously we're still not sure what that was, and then we get this image, and when you brighten that image considerably, you can see that there's some type of plastic shield or something which could could just be simply just the design of it, just to make it look kind of cool and give it a cool look. But could that opening still be there? Could there be something with it? Some people have wondered, is this like an expansion port? And could the Valve Index, maybe there's different modules that you can buy that you pop into there that add different features. Leap motion has obviously been bandied about, but there could be other interesting things. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what they could do in that spot. Do you think that's still going to be a factor here? Or do you think maybe that was just the production runs and they were doing that for testing something and it has nothing to do with the final version of Valve Index?
It probably has nothing to do with it. That doesn't help, or that doesn't change the fact that I want to speculate of it being all this other cool stuff. I think a leap motion built into a headset would be really cool, especially if it was like a Gen 2 leap motion. The Gen 1 stuff is pretty mediocre, honestly. But I mean, if the Vive can have finger tracking with only one camera, I still want to test that. Then I feel like, other headsets could easily do it way better if they had multiple cameras or some sort of depth sensor or something like that. Modularity would be really nice. I really don't think Valve will end up doing that just to complicate things more. That probably was just for testing or something to get access to the circuit boards early on. But there's always hope. I think finger tracking on something like this would be really cool. Maybe even those two cameras could do something like that. Just with all these cameras coming out on everything, there's got to be a reason for it. I feel like pass-through's just scratching the surface of what you can do with those. So,
okay, Steve. So some of the speculation that we've had since the arrival of Valve Index and the pictures and everything that's going on here, speculation is everywhere. It's all over the map, right? Is this wireless? Is it not wireless? Does this have inside out tracking and Lighthouse support? Is it inside out only? Maybe we're assuming that it's going to be Lighthouse 2.0. Why would they create these Lighthouses 2.0s and then abandon them so quickly? So my number one question for you, do you believe that this is going to have some kind of hybrid tracking, or is this a Lighthouse product with no inside out capability?
Well, I'm not going to say that there's no inside out capability because I don't know. But based on the embedded sensors, and we know Valve, makes the Lighthouse tracking, and it's been a sort of a backbone of their Steam VR platform, SDK and feature set. I'm going to assume, like, I would be surprised that if it wasn't Lighthouse tracked. And personally, I like the idea of, going back to the Rift S discussion and everything, I like the idea of inside out for the practical purposes. But then at the same time, I like the idea of augmenting that for the hardcore users that want to play Onward and lay on the floor and go prone or want to play archery games. So having scalability on your product so that you can push the cost down somewhat for more financially constrained consumers, but then also reach a not completely alienate and isolate yourself from a higher end audience. So I love the idea of inside out tracking as sort of the basic package. And then you add, external lighthouses or something to it. That's what I would hope, but we have no way of knowing, honestly.
Okay. Gary, so a question I have for you about this is, and let me explain it real quick, is like when we go back to the Oculus Rift that arrived and the HTC Vive as well, they both arrived about 3 years ago. Right around this time, 3 years ago is when all this happened. And now we're 3 years later. But when those headsets arrived, when they released those headsets, when Oculus put that headset out there and HTC and Valve, they put that other headset out there, the Vive, those headsets are kind of stuck. Like once you come out with a headset, you make your decisions on the trade-offs. We heard Jason Rubin talking about trade-offs and how that works. You can't have everything. You make these decisions. The headset is what it is. You release it into the wild. There's your baby. It's out there. You're kind of stuck with it for about 3 years, typically, right? And so my question for you is regarding resolution. Everybody wants a big resolution jump. Most of us do anyways. Most of us hardcore PC VR guys, we want to see a major jump in resolution. Problem is, you jump to a crazy high resolution, you need a graphics card that's going to drive that. What do you think Valve is going to do here from a resolution standpoint? They've got enough. I think there's maybe like 3 options that are out there for them. They can kind of go with a very mild resolution bump, which is what Oculus did with the Rift S. So you give a little resolution bump, but you're not changing min and rec specs. Or you can maybe go up to like Vive Pro, Samsung Odyssey level, a bit more of a jump. Or you can go crazy and you can go 2160 by 2160 like HP Reverb, but just start jumping up to that plateau, and then you need a new 2080 Ti graphics card. And that sounds crazy that they would do that, but then remembering, wait a minute, they're going to be stuck with this headset in 2019, 2020, 2021. We might not see a follow-up to this until 2022. That's a long time away, and it needs to be able to survive over all those years. So what do they do here with resolution? Because it's really a hard call.
I think they'll go for as high a resolution panel as they can get away with for the price that they want to sell this thing for. That's what it comes down to. The GPU thing is a problem, but you can always undersample. Sorry. So you don't need to run the GPU at maximum load or anything like that. I mean, obviously you'll run it at maximum load, but you don't necessarily need a higher end GPU to still get the benefit, because then it could scale as 2 years down the line. You could upgrade your GPU and then just super sample slightly more, or just undersample less, and get the benefits of that thing. The other thing, from going back to what Gabe Newell said in 2017, again to this AMA, he was talking about the original wave of VR, and we talked about like the CV1 and the Vive. They were based around the panels they could get at that time, and these were predominantly coming from mobile phone manufacturers. And they weren't using custom panels necessarily. They had to custom in some ways. They had to cut them down to slightly different sizes, but they were basically mobile phone panels. And what he was talking about in that AMA is the future of VR goes forward. They will have more custom panels. They will have more benefits of having panels that are specifically designed for VR. So I think it could be a case that they've got some of these custom panels and they are going for the highest resolution that they can get away with at this time. I wouldn't like to speculate. I think it depends what price point they're going for with this device. We've seen the HP Reverb 2160 by 2160. It could perfectly be the case that this Valve Index headset does have those kinds of resolutions. I don't see, if HP can do it, why Valve wouldn't be able to do that at this time. And I don't think it's necessarily a question of them saying we can't put these high resolution panels in because people haven't got GPUs powerful enough to run them. There's so many options based around that, really.
Okay, Chris, one of the crazy rumors that we've heard about in the last couple of days is related to the curvature of that thing that's on the front of the headset there, and it does appear to be some kind of plastic, or I mean, some people have thought it's a glass covering. I would think it'd be some type of plastic. Glass would be very heavy, you would think. Kind of crazy to put that on the front of a headset. But one of the things that some out there have postulated in regards to the idea of hybrid tracking, inside out tracking, could Valve actually put a lighthouse device in the actual headset itself? I know it sounds crazy, but the curvature kind of similar there, right? They got a Cyclops in there. It's going to be tracking our knuckles in real time in the headset. It's one of the craziest rumors out there. Any thoughts on that?
That's kind of interesting. I haven't thought of something like that. I mean, yeah, that's interesting, because if they were able to get, like, it's the big problem here, weight, right? Lighthouses weigh a lot. If they're able to make lighthouses weigh not too much, I mean, they have a field of view of like 170 by 170. Like you can track like almost anything with just one lighthouse, really. So that would be actually quite a wide coverage if they had a lighthouse shooting out and used inside out for just the headset itself or something like that. But I doubt that'll happen. Just due to weight alone, I think that's too much to ask. I am wearing an Oculus shirt, by the way. Got it at the booth. They were like, "How many sensors does the Quest have?" And I was like, 4. And then they threw a shirt at me.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
One more bonus question, Chris. Okay, when we look at the pictures of the Valve Index and we brighten it up dramatically, we can see that there are sensors on there. But what I find very weird is there's like 7 sensors that are like underneath it. Like I'm trying to I can't remember back to like when I had the Vive. Like I don't remember sensors being all down here. Like why are you tracking this? So my bonus question for you is what's going on with those sensors basically? Is there something weird they're doing? Is there something maybe they're not what we think they are? What could it be?
That's probably is Lighthouse. It's interesting though, because it's kind of next gen where you don't see the like diodes, because on the Vive it had like all those indents where they went in, but on Knuckles they don't have that either. So that makes sense that they're moving away from that. My guess would be if there is some sort of thing at the front of the headset, then they can't put tracking points there. So maybe they're just all kind of around the perimeter, and that's enough to track the headset well with the lighthouses. So that just kind of points to the fact that maybe there is something interesting on the front of the headset that we don't know about yet. Because I didn't look like there were any sensors on the front of the headset. Maybe that just saves space for something in the middle.
I think you would want some sensors when you look up, almost like how they position it in the picture. Like when if you look up, you need that position as well. It's what I think would be for. And I think the Vive had some down low. It's been a long time since I've studied those placements, and someone can pull up a picture, I'm sure. But like I think the Vive had some down low as well. And then I just want to jump in on the idea of a lighthouse. Unless they change the way the lighthouse will work, the lighthouse has a moving motor in it, and I think you have an inertia issue. A motor will rotate in whatever direction it rotates, but then if you swing your head the opposite direction or put forces on that headset that's opposite, you create an inertial mismatch in the motor. And I don't think that they could take existing lighthouse technology and somehow condense it down into a headset when the headset itself is moving. Now, I'm not saying that they don't have some sort of laser-based technology in there that they could use to provide tracking for the controllers. I don't think it would operate the way existing lighthouses operate.
Yeah, that's a good point, because like you'd barely touch a lighthouse with like the tip of your finger and it will like lose optical tracking and get confused. So yeah.
Yeah, but you know what, Chris, I like what you said there about if there is something special, that's on the front of that and they need more sensors around the perimeter. It's a possibility, because we have seen the factory photos. There are a lot of sensors that are like around all the perimeter and not so much like right on the front there. Steve, one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is pricing. Okay. And when we think about pricing in the PC VR market, you've got these Windows mixed reality headsets that are still, they're an older generation, the ones that are on Amazon all the time for around $200 and something and that kind of range. They're the low end cheapo headsets that are out there. We've got the Rift S that is going to be arriving probably any day now, within the next couple weeks, I would think. And that's going to be $400. Now we have Valve Index. The thing is, we don't have a history to look at. You can think about HTC, but it's a bad comparison. They don't own a gigantic store like Steam, and they don't have like billions of dollars just sitting in a bank somewhere like Valve has. And so, what do you think is going to happen here from a pricing? I've got a couple of questions. First of all, do you think we're going to have a bundle in the month of May that includes Knuckles, it includes 2 lighthouses, it's the full enchilada? And what do you think is the absolute lowest that full enchilada could possibly retail at?
Okay, loaded question. So we are going to have bundles, and we're going to have some form. I don't want to say a la carte, but we'll have some sort of broken down. Gabe was answering emails on this, and if the emails are legit and everything, he did say that there would be options. So that sounds good, because there's going to be people with existing tech that won't need a full bundle. So that's what I think. I think price on bundle, it gets very interesting. So when you look at, a lot of people talk about, and we're guilty of it in the same way, but the Rift S versus the Quest, and you look what's in the box of one versus what's in the box of the other. One of the arguments a lot of people made was that Oculus could subsidize the Quest because they know that they're going to get software sales. Which conversely, I would say the same thing that Valve could do. If we go all the way back 3 years, what is Valve? So you have to answer, what is Valve's interest in this? Why do they care? I say they care because they want to be on the forefront of an emerging disruptive technology, and they want to maintain the effective monopoly that they have on software distribution for PC gaming. So, when you bought that HTC Vive Home, you put it on, you plugged it in, you set the sensors up, you followed it, and then you turn it on. What happened? You were directed to Steam. You couldn't go anywhere else. You were funneled through Steam. Likewise, when you buy the Oculus, you're funneled through Oculus Home. So what has happened is Vive HTC realizing economically that they can't rely on profit from hardware, HTC has gone out and done Viveport. So I think we have a fracturing between Valve and HTC here. I'll be very interesting to see that when you get a Cosmos, I'm guessing when you boot it up for the first time, it's going to funnel you through Viveport. It's not going to funnel you through Steam VR. So Valve wants to have a device on the market that funnels people to Steam VR and to the Steam store. So I think that is basically what's at play here. Pricing wise, in addition to them having a reason to sell this at little to no profit because they can tether tons of software sales to it, I think we also have to consider that they make the lighthouses. So we shouldn't assume HTC type pricing for the accessories. We shouldn't assume HTC type pricing for the tech as a whole. So it's internalized. So I could see a full bundle being $599. Like, I don't think this is going to be $800, $1,000. People are saying it's going to be super expensive. I could see it coming in more expensive than the Rift at $399. But I don't think it's going to be this twice as much as a Rift S. I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, but what if they're throwing in all these like advanced things, these super advanced lenses, 135-degree field of view, possibly. I mean, I know that's just a rumor and all, hybrid tracking. I mean, all that stuff adds up, doesn't it? I mean, you think they could squeeze all that in at that? Do you think they would subsidize it, or would they sell it at cost?
I mean, it would be hard to say. I mean, we don't know what it has, so I don't know if we can assume that it's going to have the tons of things. Doing the manufacturing costs, doing the development on these stacked lenses, getting that development, that engineering, that science out of the way, the actual manufacturing cost, once you have that design and you know what you want to do, the manufacturing cost is some plastic. So the incremental physical cost. So once you do the development, that's where your cost is. And if they've done that, then they've done that. And they've probably been doing that for a long time, whether they plan to do a Valve headset or they just assumed they would continue their partnership with HTC. I don't think they can afford, I don't think it's wise for them to come out of the gate with $1,000 product. Even though the Vive Pro bundle costs, quite a bit more than that. I don't think it's wise for them to do that. And I don't think that that's necessarily what Valve wants to do. I do think they can afford to sell it at cost, giving all the content that they are going to then sell to those buyers. Because again, they're going to be funneled through that store. When a Valve Index buyer may go out and buy stuff from Viveport, they may go out and buy stuff from Oculus, but I think the primary of their purchases is going to be on Steam.
Okay, Gary, number one question I have for you is Valve Index. It says Valve Index on there. So I have two major questions for you. Number one is a quick one. It's basically very quick. is this going to be shipped by Valve? Like, is this actually coming to our house from Valve? Or is there like some silent hardware partner that we don't know about yet that is going to handle a lot of this stuff? Okay. And then the second part of that question is, one of the things I think everybody underestimates about these kinds of products is the aftermath of releasing a product like this. Their support. Support is huge, man. I think it's the number one reason why there isn't a VR headset for the Xbox at all. Like, everybody thinks Microsoft can just flip a switch and all the Windows mixed reality headsets could work perfectly fine with the Xbox One X. And that's probably true. They probably could do that, but support is a major issue, especially when you're selling a product that blinds people. There's a lot of moving parts to the thing from a standpoint of setting up sensors in different rooms and Steam and all these different things that all combine. And support can be complicated, not so much for us that are enthusiasts, but for the general public out there. Do you think Valve as a company is prepared to deliver this product, support this product? Like, it's a major undertaking. Are they ready for this?
Yeah, so just go back to your first point on that. Is this going to be shipped by Valve? Honestly, I think it could be. I wouldn't discount entirely the fact that they could have partnered with some hardware manufacturer and stuck the Valve name on top of that. I think that's possible. But I think what they had, I think that Valve have always had these aspirations to become this hardware manufacturer as well. They've sort of dipped their toes into it with the controllers, which I believe, like the controllers in the Steam Link. I don't know if they manufactured them themselves or if they partnered with somebody else to manufacture them, which they probably did. But I think they've always had these sort of subtle aspirations to get into the hardware side of things. And it goes back again to what Gabe Newell was saying. They want to closely align hardware with the software that they're developing as well. And that makes sense. So it's difficult to say whether they will be. I predict they possibly will be, but I think as well we need to not underestimate the amount of time that Valve have been developing all of this stuff. To us, this is like blown us away. This has come out this last week, and we think this has come out of the blue in some ways, not in every way, of course. There's been rumors flying around, but we don't need to underestimate the amount of time Valve have been developing all of this stuff behind the scenes. You can read the history of the future, and we know that Valve have been working on VR, AR for going back 10 years. This has not come out of the blue, and I don't think we need to underestimate that fact. And I think the fact that they do want to possibly get into hardware manufacturing in order to increase their profits and get people within their ecosystem is probably the way they're going. What was your other point, Anthony? Sorry.
Support. Were you talking about
sorry.
support?
Yeah. So support. Okay. Yeah. Again, I suppose that sort of goes back to what I was talking about with that, really. If they are going to do this themselves, support is, of course, an option, especially coming from somebody that is not a hardware manufacturer. And there will be concerns from the community and consumers buying this product. And I have my own concerns with that as well. But again, they have been developing this in place. They're not stupid. This is not a stupid company. They know what they're doing. They know they need all of these separate lines to align in order to release a product. They can't just release a product, throw it out there, job done. And they're not like that. They have a lot of income, they have a lot of resources, and I think that they could do a good job of releasing this as a hardware product. It will be a concern until they're proven. They've got a proven track record on this stuff. But I think that we shouldn't underestimate them on any level, really, when releasing this headset.
Okay. Chris, so one of the things that we've not talked a lot about here, and it might be the biggest thing in the entire deal, is the fact that the second this headset is available, Knuckles is expected to be available the same day, right? I mean, we would think Knuckles has been out there. We've got YouTubers all around the world that have Knuckles. They've been playing around with them. Knuckles is a known commodity. Developers have had it. There's been different revisions of the Knuckles, and forever we've said, oh my God, Knuckles, when's it going to come? It's been around for forever. And I think looking at Valve Index, you got to imagine that the Knuckles were held back so that they could be, this whole thing could come out at a singular time, right? But the other thing is the game. There's 3 Valve games, and I believe Gabe has said that one of the Valve games is actually going to arrive like when Knuckles arrives. And so I think we're assuming here, but I think it's safe to assume, and there's actually some information to this because Tyler McVicker, I believe, of Valve News Network, they were analyzing the Steam page, and it said something about free game, like 100% discount on a game or something. It was something with the index, right? Okay, so let's assume you buy a bundle, you get your Valve Index, you get your Lighthouses 2.0, you get a pair of Knuckles, and you get a code in the box for a free Valve game. Now, I'm not even going to speculate on what this game is, but my question to you is, number 1, does VR have a killer app? Number 2, could this be the killer app? Could this be a game changer like we can't even imagine, where we've got all these flat gamers, just like you were there at PAX, people walking by and like, oh, they're still doing this VR thing, huh? But those kinds of gamers with a real Valve game that has been in development for 5-6 years, that is going to take advantage of everything VR has to offer. I mean, could we be looking at just a watershed moment in the VR gaming, like that second wind, that is just going to be incredible? What do you think?
You're getting me all hyped up. If that actually happens, I mean, that would be incredible. You gotta hope Valve is doing something behind the scenes all these years. They're not just like sitting around experimenting and throwing stuff out. They've got to have something in development. And I think you're right. If anyone can make like a really good VR game that is really influential and gets those flat gamers on board, I think Valve has the chance to do that. And I've always felt like, what is Valve doing? They have Steam VR. They have all this money. They just have like infinite money. Why can't they make the killer app? They should be funding all this stuff and subsidizing headsets. So I hopefully, this headset subsidized, that comes out with an amazing game. Like that would be a big game changer. For me, currently, killer app on my radar is Stormlands for Oculus, but we'll find out when that ever comes out later this year. But yeah, that would be incredible. That would be a big day for VR. I have no idea how to speculate on that. Because I don't want to get too excited, because Valve in the past hasn't done anything like that. But once they do, that'll be huge, I think.
Okay, Steve, I've got a great question for you. Get ready for this one, baby. Okay, so here's how it works. Who's the loser here, man? Like the Valve Index has arrived. We've got the Rift S. We know Oculus ain't going nowhere, and we know Valve is going to be around. Who's the loser here? Like, who gets smoked out of this deal? And what I'm talking about is these other VR companies.
3 letters for you: H, T, and C. It's really like if everyone has said, as soon as someone else competent comes into the Steam VR tracking and ecosystem space, that it's going to spell difficulties for HTC. I think HTC is far and away the biggest loser by Valve doing this. I think they know this. So like, we're getting news of this, here in the last couple of days. Even though we've known the Valve thing via the leak was kind of out there for a long time, going back last fall. The companies that are in the know, these manufacturers and industry folk, they talk behind the scenes, they talk at the bar, at a hotel. Like, these things happen. So HTC has sort of known that their time was limited with this sort of effective exclusivity and monopoly window through this partnership with Steam. So that's why you've seen them position themselves to do Viveport, to get away from Steam VR, get away from Lighthouse tracking with the Cosmos. We're seeing this all shake out right in front of our eyes. So HTC is by far the biggest loser. I think Oculus will lose some of the enthusiast fan base. Like I don't think Oculus is going anywhere. It's going to be too largely impacted. But the hardcore, browse Reddit everyday crowd, you can see it manifest. They're going to, they wanted more out of the Rift S, even though we knew it wasn't going to be more. They wanted more out of the Rift S, and they are going to be very tempted by this Valve product. With Knuckles coming out, we also have to consider, with Knuckles coming out, or assumingly coming out, like I would be shocked that it wasn't bundled with this headset. With Knuckles, you're going to have control parity with the Oculus Touch controllers. Now, I'm not saying that the Knuckles are necessarily going to be better than Touch, but you're going to have at least input parity. So it's going to be very different using a Valve headset with Revive than when we used the Vive headset with Revive and we were trying to map buttons to the touchpad, and some games didn't translate quite as well as other games. I think Revive translations are going to be much better with Knuckles controllers, whether you're using that on a Pimax or using it on a Valve headset or even using it on a Vive. So I think Oculus will stand out largely okay. And then the other really, I don't think it really impacts Windows MR much. I mean, Reverb, HP Reverb may take a hit here. I think they're kind of a loser, nowhere to the degree that HTC would be. And then Pimax, I think Pimax basically stays about the same. I have no reason to believe that this Valve headset is going to encroach on their one big advantage, which is Fove. Pimax was always going to be a niche within a niche, for the time being at least, and only those seeking out super wide Fove are going to really go after a Pimax and put up with it. So I think they kind of just continue doing their thing off on the side.
Okay. Well, we've been going for a while on this topic, and we could continue. Like, we could talk about the Valve Index all day. I mean, there's a million different angles to look at this. But I think what we should do now is we could wrap up this discussion of Valve Index, and then maybe a little bit later in the show, if we have any other little thoughts, we can get back to it. But before we close this out, I wanted to go around the table here and basically do a check of where's your money going now, basically, is the question here. And we'll start it off with Gary. Gary, I know you've been itchy. You want to get a new headset. You've dabbled with some of these other headsets. You tried a Pimax recently. Did you have a Samsung Odyssey for a minute? I can't remember now.
Yeah, briefly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been thinking about these things. You've been wanting a new headset. You probably were mentally prepared to buy a Rift S. You probably thought that's a done deal. You're buying a Rift S. It's problem solved. There's your new headset. But now this news comes out. So basically my question for you is, where is your money going, basically?
Yeah. Nothing against the Odyssey, by the way. I did really like most aspects of that headset, but it just wasn't for me. With this, I mean, a lot of people have mentioned how, I think you mentioned it as well earlier on, Anthony, how people were pretty much, if the Rift S was going to be released on the 28th, then a lot of people would have gone for that. And I would have pre-ordered or ordered a Rift S on that day. Now, almost definitely not. I'm getting the Quest. The Quest is a done deal. I'm definitely getting a Quest. And I'll probably keep my original Rift for the moment, and also probably purchase the Valve Index, depending on specs. There's still so many things that are up in the air. We don't know. We're assuming a lot here based on rumors and that kind of stuff. But my gut reaction is I'll go for the Valve Index, the Quest, and then possibly at a later date, maybe get a Rift S just to replace my current Rift. It's not really an upgrade, the Rift S. It's just sort of replacing my current Rift and doing some things that I think I'd prefer, honestly. But yeah.
Okay, Chris, what about you? Where are you going to go with your money?
Yeah. I mean, Quest is a done deal. Quest is great. It's so good. Like, that beat all my expectations when I tried it. So I'm really excited about Quest. I think a lot of people are going to jump into that. It really, for me, it depends on how much the Index costs. If it's like $499 $5.99. That could probably entice me to consider picking up an Index. But I was blown away what the Rift S did to me, because I have like a really good IPD. I'm not worried about that stuff. For me, Rift S was way more comfortable. The screen was like a big upgrade to me. The lenses were really good to me. So for me, it felt like Rift S is like really good. And something I think isn't said enough is the benefits of inside out tracking. For me, that's huge, because I'm going to be taking my headsets all over the place, and it is such a pain setting up lighthouses. And I set up 2 Vives in the same room the other day when I was testing out my production game, and you can't do that. Like the lighthouses will cancel each other out and bug out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this feels archaic compared to inside out tracking. So I think for my needs, I think I'll still go for Rift S unless we find out some things about lighthouses maybe being optional or something like that. But for me, that's kind of not as cool as it used to be. Like I used to be like, wow, this tracking is so accurate. Like I want that. But Rift S kind of changed that for me, for my use case. So we'll see on the price, I guess.
Okay, and then Steve, I believe you have some news to announce in your headset lineup. Some changes have happened recently. Why don't you talk about that for a quick sec?
I'm not sure it's news. I don't think people care that much. But so I got to thinking. Well, I sold my Rift. Like on eBay, they were going pretty good money. I think a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't buy these now," and they're not wanting to wait. So I sold my Rift for $400 shipped. I got to pay eBay fees and all that crap. So had the Rift S came out on the 28th, I would have bought one, and it would have been about a net cost to me of about $50 to trade my Rift in for a Rift S, somewhere around there, give or take $10-15. So I was set. I was almost not looking at it as buying a Rift S, but I was like, hey, well, I'm basically trading. And then I'm like, okay, I have my Odyssey. I'll trade it for maybe with some money, maybe for HP Reverb. So now I'm thinking I'll still do the Rift S. And then I'll also probably sell the Odyssey and get the Valve Index. We're putting a lot, like Gary said, like there's a lot we don't know. We're putting a lot on what we assume from Valve and what we assume from what we perceive to be as their capabilities. So for now, I would say that those are my plans. Of course, I'm getting a Quest as well. Quest is a thing on the side. Like it really doesn't matter which PC VR headset you're rocking. The Quest seems to be a good augment for taking the experiences portable. I've always said here a lot in the last month or so that for those that have a Pimax, you need a backup. So I'm gonna have a backup. I might have 2 backups. I don't know. We'll just have to see how this goes. But I'm at a point where I'm looking at almost every VR headset as a rental. Like you pay a fee, you have it for a while, but it maintains some equity in the sense that it's not a completely lost cost. You can sell it and step up to something else with the proceeds. So I never look at any cost of an HMD as a complete and total lost cost that I'm sinking. So it's kind of just keep moving my money around, sprinkling a little more into it and moving it around and trying a bunch of different products.
Okay, and just to complete the roundtable here, I'll just say that for myself personally, like Gary, I plan on getting an Oculus Quest. I don't think, I'm not even going to wait to find out more details of the Index. Like if the Quest were to come out next Wednesday and we didn't have any Index details, I'm getting the Quest. There's some people that still believe that the Index could possibly have standalone capabilities. That little socket on the front there, right? You just pop in the Snapdragon cartridge and you're good to go. And it's wireless and all of that. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's doing a little too much. So I think I'm safe in buying a Quest and doing that. As far as the rest of it goes, I'm basically going to wait for the information. I'm still a tiny bit interested in HP Reverb, as crazy as that sounds. I know there's a lot of little downsides to the HP Reverb, but I'm still like that crazy high resolution. There's something about that still kind of appeals to me. So I still want to kind of think about that a little bit. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for our Valve Index discussion for now, because look, there's other things that happen this week, other really big, major things that have happened this week. And I think we need to start talking about some of this other stuff. So way back on Monday, Sony had an event that was called State of Play. Now, basically, what this was, it was like a Nintendo Direct. And everybody was saying, oh, Sony's doing a Nintendo Direct. They kind of got screwed on that in terms of like Twitter and everything. I believe Nintendo Direct was like trending rather than Sony State of Play, because everybody just was like, yeah, Sony's doing a Nintendo Direct. And so what Sony did was they came out with some videos that basically kind of gave everybody an idea of all the big games that are coming down the pipe and a lot of VR stuff. But the biggest news of all, and this is just incredible monster news, No Man's Sky. Not only is it coming to PlayStation VR, it's coming to all the major VR headsets. It's coming to PC VR. So we're going to see it on the Oculus Store. We're going to see it on Steam, Windows Mixed Reality, Pimax, all these headsets. You're going to be able to play No Man's Sky in VR this summer. How incredible is that? This is the Beyond update. And the way we understand it, it's not a VR mode. It's the entire game of No Man's Sky has basically, VR's been added to the whole enchilada, kind of Fallout 4, Skyrim VR style. The whole thing is VR. Pretty incredible. Now, we have somebody on our panel that is a big fan of No Man's Sky, has been a big fan of No Man's Sky for quite some time. That's Gary. Gary, I know you've played the flat version of this game. You've appreciated it. This game's had a rocky history ever since its beginning. You know, it first came out, because I remember way back in the days when it first came out, I listened to all kinds of gaming podcasts, and everybody talked about it nonstop. No Man's Sky this, No Man's Sky that. They promised the sun, the moon, and the stars. We got the actual game, didn't quite deliver everything, and there was a huge backlash. And for me, like, people wanted to have like a freaking lawsuit again. Like, was there like a class action? I can't even remember all the stuff that happened with Hello Games and No Man's Sky. It was like a soap opera. It was a drama over quite some time. But so many improvements have been made over the years to this game. This is not the same No Man's Sky that was way back then. Gary, when you heard this announcement, were you like, oh my goodness, this is incredible?
Yep, I was, and I literally said, "Oh my God!" And my wife said, "What?" I was. We were actually in bed. We were watching something on TV in bed together. Nothing like that. Don't go there. And I was just on my phone, just going through the subreddits, and I went, "Oh my God!" And my wife said, "What?" And then she said, once I told her, she just called me a geek and then moved on. But yeah, this was huge news. This is basically the biggest VR news for the past 6 years, in my opinion. I can't wait for this. So yeah, it did have a big, a few problems at launch from certain people. I played a lot of it on launch and I loved it. And I loved it for the concept of what the game's offering. It's offering a world, a galaxy where you can seamlessly explore from planet to planet. You can get down to the micro details of like a rock on the surface of a planet. You can wander around a planet, then get in your ship, take off and fly to the next planet in the distance. And all this works seamlessly. It's just an incredible concept for a game. Now, where it fell down at launch, in my opinion, is the moment-to-moment gameplay mechanics, and that's what a lot of people had problems with. Not really the concept of the game at all. It was all down to the moment-to-moment mechanics of the game, and it was thin. It was very thin on launch, but I still played a hell of a lot of it. Since then, Hello Games, they're rapidly becoming one of my favorite developers, honestly. In spite of what some people think, they have stuck with this game, delivered update after update throughout the years. It's been released 3 years now, almost 3 years, and they are continually delivering these updates free of charge and completely revolutionizing the game. It's not, every update is not just a little bug fix or anything like that. The updates that they give are completely changing the way the game works and delivering more of the things they originally wanted to deliver. And people call them, like Hello Games, Sean Murray, they call them liars. And I don't think they are liars. I think they couldn't deliver on launch what they wanted to deliver originally. And I think part of that comes from pressure from all angles, Sony possibly being one of them. Now, this is a game that I've wanted in VR. They gave sort of interviews even before the game was launched, sort of little clues that they were thinking about VR as being some kind of a mode that they wanted to include in the game at some point. Even on the last update, the next update that they did, they had this, and Steve, I'm sure you'll remember this, where Sean Murray tweeted out a hexadecimal code, and it translated to Morpheus, which is obviously making reference to the Project Morpheus PSVR. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were trying to push VR in that last update. They just didn't quite get it ready in time. But with this update and the trailer that we're seeing, this is not just gamepad VR update, which is what I expected, honestly, from this game. They are actually incorporating motion controls. They are doing various things, and Sean Murray has actually stated as well on the blog update for this that this is not just a port of VR version of No Man's Sky. It's not just porting it over. They have worked really hard in order to incorporate the motion controllers and get a really good VR experience. Time will tell whether that's the case or not. I still have a lot of reservations, and I hope that none of them are founded, because I want this to be the VR game that I play. So I've got this game. I've got No Man's Sky on PC. I've also got it on PSVR. I bought both versions. My son plays it a lot, and I haven't played a huge amount lately, but I will definitely be starting again back into this No Man's Sky universe once the VR version comes out. And I suppose the final thing I want to say is that this is like to me, with the MMO updates that they've also promised in this latest update that will be coming out this summer, they're promising something which I think we're getting closer to a Ready Player One kind of Oasis thing with this. And I know that sounds like hyperbolic and stuff like that, but honestly, I don't see what we have closer to that at this moment in time, because if you've got multiplayer MMO kind of additions to this game alongside VR, where you can travel. It's in Ready Player One. You travel from planet to planet in a spaceship, and it's all seamless and it just works. And that's what No Man's Sky is offering. I know I'm probably a little bit overhyped about this game, and that's probably coming across, but I can't wait for this. This is probably the biggest VR game announcement since I got into VR, to be honest.
I can agree with that. I think this shot up to my number one most anticipated, and I've never played the game. Like, it's my number one game, and I've never played it flat. Just looking at it, and Gary, when I was at your house a couple months back, like, you showed me the systems and stuff a little bit. This game to me seems like it marries two of my favorite games in VR somewhat, and I'm not trying to distill it down to that simplicity, but it looks like it takes some of the good things of Subnautica and some of the good things of Elite Dangerous and puts them together. They have a little baby. It's No Man's Sky. This game is easily my most anticipated title. I absolutely can't wait. I'm probably going to get it for PC and PlayStation VR because it's the perfect thing. I'm hoping I can use it to get my son off of the crack rock that is Fortnite, and that he and I can come up here and we can play No Man's Sky together in VR together. I have such high hopes for this. Like, I just think this is a fantastic announcement. And as much as I'll probably like Stormland and Asgard's Wrath, like, I think this one has more to offer in terms of the value proposition. Now, Gary, I do have a question, again, because you know so much more about the game than I do, but does it, either on PC or on PlayStation, does it support the HOTAS at any point, or is it gamepad and or keyboard mouse?
This is a good point to bring up, and it's something I wanted to mention as well. As far as I know, I think it because I've not tried it on PC, because that was a long time ago I played it on PC and I got the PSVR version. I played it on DualShock. I don't know if it supports HOTAS on the PC. I'm pretty sure it doesn't support it on the PS4. Correct me in chat if I'm wrong on that. But the point is, when we see this trailer, it looks like they are using motion controllers. And this is a difficulty. And I wanted to get into this and ask you guys what you think of this as well. So they're using motion controllers, which works very well when you're wandering around a planet. But when you get into a spaceship and you've got to control a HOTAS kind of setup, but just using motion controllers, it's not the perfect way of doing it, but it's a way, and it works by all accounts. It's kind of like the same problem we had with LA Noire, where you're walking around the streets and then you get in a car and you have to control the steering wheel with motion controllers. It works, and it's a great implementation of VR, but it doesn't necessarily feel that great. So I would love it to have a combination of motion controllers, HOTAS controls, or just DualShock on PS4. If you can transition between those, that would be a great way to play it as well. There's a lot of questions, but yeah, it's a good point to bring up.
If only we had a headset with hand tracking, then we could be holding our controller and then we let it go and then our hands are in VR. What a novel concept. One thing I wanted to do really quick though is we do have 3 different super chatters. I want to thank them very much for their contributions. Recycled with a super chat. Thanks so much for that. Tony M with a super chat, and John Bardo. Thank you so much, guys. We absolutely appreciate it. It's tremendous.
Add to that, I am Ruts and Mark Henshaw. Ruts, Henshaw, Tony M, and John Bardo are all repeat super chatters, so extra thanks.
Yeah. Okay. One thing I do want to say really quick here is I don't think we can go around the table for every little news announcement because we still got a lot more stuff. So let's go ahead and move on. I mean, look, No Man's Sky is huge. We were just talking about killer apps. This is one of those. This is the kind of thing that could move people into VR. This is something that can get fence sitters. This is huge. I can't believe all this stuff that is happening at the same time. It's really quite crazy.
Had one thing to say is that, when this is released, this is going to be the most owned VR title. And like they said that in their update post. They're like, that's really exciting. This is going to be the most owned VR title just based on so many people buying it in the past. So that's just another point of how huge this is going to be.
We do also, that's a good point to bring up, Chris. But we do also have Martin Requiem in chat, who is the owner of the biggest No Man's Sky Facebook group as well, and he's joined us here to listen to our discussion as well. So thank you for joining us, because this is a big deal. I think it's a big deal in the No Man's Sky community, the PSVR community in general, and this is going to bring a lot of people into VR from the PSVR side. Not only that, but it's also going to get coverage on the mainstream gaming media side, I would imagine. And just to go back to the original, like the Valve Index headset, I also think that's good for VR in general, because mainstream games media cover anything to do with Valve, so they'll cover that. So overall, these 2 news stories are definitely a benefit overall to VR.
Yeah, it's Christmas in spring, Christmas in summer. The amount of games that are coming in the next, potentially, the next 90 to 120 days, it's unreal. Okay, speaking of a game deluge, we got other games that were announced. We've got dates from PlayStation's State of Play event. Sony is really banging away at this thing. So what are some of the other games that are coming? Falcon Age. We've heard that is coming on April 9th. Everybody's Golf VR, maybe the first really good golf game in VR, that's coming on May 21st. Blood and Truth, which is a full-blown follow-up to basically London Heist that was in PlayStation VR Worlds, with one of the best developers on planet Earth working on that. Blood and Truth, May 28th. Okay, Mini Mech Mayhem is coming, I believe, in June, June 18th or something like that. Trover Saves the Universe. This is actually pretty big news for the entire gaming industry, because Trover Saves the Universe is May 31st on PlayStation VR, but it's coming to Steam and Oculus on, I believe, June 4th, a couple of days later. So Trover is going to be everywhere. Table of Tales, I forget the date for that one. Jupiter and Mars is coming, I believe, April 22nd. Five Nights at Freddy's is apparently coming in the month of April for all platform. Well, for PlayStation VR and PC VR as well. So just a cornucopia of announcements. And did I say Iron Man VR? Iron Man VR is also headed. I don't think we have a date for that. I think it's later in the year 2019. One thing I will say, though, about Iron Man VR, and I don't know if you guys agree with me, trailer wasn't that great. Trailer was not that great. But The developer of that game is Camouflage. They are the developers of Republic. Ryan Payton was an assistant producer to Hideo Kojima for all those years. He broke away from that, started his own company, Camouflage. They did Republic, and now they've been working on Iron Man VR, and I think they've been working on it for years. And an announcement came out that what we saw in the trailer was just the briefest of snippets. So hopefully Iron Man VR looks a lot better.
Well, I know we can't jump in on all of these, but on that, like, I don't necessarily feel the same way you do on that trailer. That trailer featured a lot of not actual gameplay footage, so it's a very early teaser trailer, and I think the game is probably a ways out. But when I think of what it means, and going back to Marvel Powers United, Iron Man was one that we sort of said, hey, where's Iron Man at? Right? He wasn't in that game. Yeah. And what I saw in this very small gameplay portion of that trailer, what I saw is the idea of what it might actually be like to be Iron Man. And I think they may still be able to capture that feeling. So I just wanted to jump in and say that I'm on the opposite side. Like, I don't think it's going to necessarily be the best game ever. A lot of times licensed properties aren't. But I think it can be good. And I think, going back to what we all thought of Marvel Powers United and the Spider-Man Homecoming demo thing that was released, is that kids and a lot of people want to be these characters. I mean, Marvel is slaying it in the box office. Comics are probably at the Marvel and the DC properties are probably at their highest point than they've ever been, going back to all the way into their inception generations ago. And I think Iron Man VR can be big.
Yeah. I mean, when I'm talking smack about it, I'm talking smack about the trailer, like what they showed. So hopefully it's way better than, just that little snippet we saw.
Sorry, Anthony. Yeah. I know we need to move on, but very quickly on this, because Paradise Decay did mention in chat as well that this Sony State of Play video was actually deleted from YouTube because of negative reaction from the general community. So, I mean, that's annoying because it was obviously VR focused. It was a lot of the things that were announced there were VR, and people were probably expecting more. And I've just done a quick search on it on YouTube, and people are very disappointed overall, albeit the VR community are pretty enthusiastic about it. But that's I don't think that's a good thing to hear, unfortunately. I think Fluke Bodgy mentioned that to Paradise Decay.
Okay, and I did want to thank Gaming in Still Life with a couple of super chats, and he's also saying that there's a Coma VR stream giveaway in 4 hours, so you might want to check that out. Okay.
Speaking of streams or giveaways, I completely forgot. I apologize to the audience, but if you stuck with us through all the Valve Index stuff, we do have a giveaway. I got a few Final Assault codes to give away, so I'm just going to throw them in chat. So yeah, we're an hour and a half in or whatever, and just now getting to these. But again, if you stuck with us, then you got the opportunity. So I'll just sprinkle these in randomly in chat through the rest of the show.
Okay, so in other Sony news, this huge announcement of all these games, all these dates, so many games coming in April and May and June. So really exciting stuff going on there. But some other information that we got is Sony has now passed the 4 million mark in headsets sold. 4.2 million PlayStation VR units have been sold worldwide. That is very huge. It's very important. I think it's great for our industry overall. A lot of people have said that 4.2 million is kind of similar to, like, if you combined all the Oculus and HTC Vive headsets and you combine them into one big pool, it would be a very similar thing. And if you're a developer out there, knowing that you have an addressable market of 4.2 million potential customers to buy your software, that is really huge. That's great news for the industry overall. Lots of good news there. Okay, now we need to move on and talk a little bit about some Oculus Quest, because this is something else that happened this week. Is we got a video that was released. I believe maybe this was Tuesday. I'm trying to remember what day this was. I'm thinking it was Tuesday. We got a video that came out on YouTube from Oculus that was kind of like the unveiling, if you will, of the Oculus Quest. It's getting closer and closer to launch. We think launch is relatively imminent within probably the next 60 days, you'd have to imagine. We got this video that was released and lots of clips of different games. And then even after that video came out, a whole bunch of different developers were tweeting out there, this game's been confirmed, that game's been confirmed. It is kind of crazy what's going on out there with all these Oculus Quest games. But let's go ahead and run down what some of the big games are that we know about. Okay, Creed, Rise to Glory was shown in the clip. It was highlighted in the clip, the very first game shown. And I think of all the games shown, it actually looks really good on the Oculus Quest hardware, which kind of makes sense when you consider you've got one major character that you're kind of looking at, the referee, the ring, but really that one character, so they can dedicate a lot of polygons, looked very good. VR chat. This could be a pretty huge game changer for the Oculus Quest because so many people are into VR chat, but the cost of entry is so prohibitive with buying a gaming PC and extra sensors and all that stuff. So VR chat coming to Oculus Quest, that's huge. Vacation Simulator and Job Simulator, both of them are coming to Oculus Quest. I'm kind of curious if they're going to stagger these, maybe Job Simulator at launch and then Vacation a little bit later, or will they both be out right away? I don't know. Apex Construct by Fast Travel Games, that is coming to Oculus Quest. Rec Room has been confirmed for Oculus Quest. Space Pirate Trainer, 11 Table Tennis, I Expect You to Die. Okay, wait, you've got Windlands 2 here, but I thought they came out and said Windlands and Windlands 2 has not been confirmed, but I don't know. Maybe there's some new information.
Yeah, that's true. I put that on the list, and then it did come out. The developer did tweet it to say it's not confirmed in the video, but they didn't discount it completely. So, I'd be surprised if they could get it on the Quest, but maybe, never know.
Yeah. And so, a lot of other stuff going on. Just everything is looking pretty incredible in Oculus Quest land. The hype is real. People are excited. But if we want to go a little bit on the Debbie Downer side, we got to go just a little bit to the Debbie Downer side. Robo Recall. We can talk really briefly because there was like 2 seconds of footage basically of Robo Recall that was thrown in this trailer, and it kind of got hyper analyzed. I mean, I did it myself. I took out the 1.5 seconds, is running it on repeat, had some screenshots of Robo Recall as well, and the graphical downgrade. So I just want to go around the table really quick. Gary, when you saw the Robo Recall stuff and just all the other Quest trailers that you've seen, any thoughts about like graphic horrors and Oculus Quest and like kind of how all this stuff is playing itself out?
No, not really. I mean, I think to me, Robo Recall looked pretty good from what I saw. It's not running on a PC, so you expect a significant, like a major significant downgrade on the graphics, and that turned out to be the case. No surprises really. I felt that was going to be the case, and it looked okay to me. And you can't go, if you want the best graphics, don't get a Quest. It's going to be downgraded from the PC. So just enjoy the experiences that you're being offered, and don't analyze the graphics too much, in my opinion. Yeah.
Okay, Chris, I know you're going to be talking about your experiences at PAX, so wait for that for a minute here. But just in terms of the video that you saw, all the different little clips of Quest games, any thoughts like Robo Recall or anything else? Any quick thoughts about it?
I think Robo Recall is probably better than we think. Like, I know Epic released a screenshot after showing the game, and it looks really good, except for the road texture. Maybe they can just fix the road texture. Honestly, that's what everyone's focused on. But this video is fantastic. Like, this got me so excited for Quest. I think they did a really great job showcasing all this stuff coming for Quest. So I'm really excited. Yeah.
Okay, and Steve, Vader Immortal, baby. We haven't talked about Vader Immortal. We got about 5-6 seconds of Vader Immortal. We saw Darth Vader kind of walking around. Presumably that was real Oculus Quest gameplay there. What's your thoughts, Steve, on like some of the higher end Quest games and how they're going to fare with graphics and that sort of thing, Robo Recall and all that?
Well, I think, to what Gary said, like, don't go into this looking at graphics. Like, you're going to be disappointed if you're an experienced PC VR gamer. Well, you're going to be disappointed, even if you're not a PC gamer, because you're going to be comparing it to 4K Xbox One S or something. So just don't go into the Quest worried about graphics. I think the Robo Recall Street had the textures removed because of the loss of dynamic shadows. So maybe it stands out less if they keep the original sort of texture coloring in there and you don't see any shadows with the robots as they're approaching you. I mean, this is running on mobile hardware. I think we're going to be, those in the know are going to be impressed at the efficiency that the developers are going to be able to get out of this computing device. But ultimately, it's not going to be a graphical powerhouse. And we just have to accept that and get over it. And we have to focus on the portability of it. We have to focus on the wireless of it. We have to focus on the idea that when we go camping in the middle of the summer, we can bring our Oculus Go with us and play Beat Saber in the middle of the forest if we want to. That is what the Quest is going to be good at. That said, when I think of a game like Robo Recall, I'm less worried about the graphics, but if it's the same game, gameplay wise, if the shooting and the teleporting and the grabbing of the bullets and flinging them back, if all of that is done to a similar fidelity as on PC, then it's going to be a very good game. All of these games, like this is mostly what I'm seeing, and you can say it in a good way or take a bad stance on it. But from the Sizzle reel, it's mostly games that already exist on PC VR that are being ported to the Quest. And I think that says good that our existing sort of PC VR library, in a way, in terms of the content that we're already used to, is able of going to the Quest in some form or the other. The negative stance of that same statement is, well, there's nothing really uniquely for Quest coming to Quest. And, I'm not sure. I have to probably give it a little more thought, and I'm not sure that there should necessarily be things that are uniquely for Quest. I like the idea of taking higher fidelity games and stripping them down and making them available on Quest rather than simpler kind of Quest dumbed down games that come up the other way. So I still think Quest is a great idea.
One little question I have regarding the Quest, and I'll throw this at Gary real quick. We've heard this report, or we've heard this statement that's been made that there's going to be 50, I don't know if it was 50 titles or 50 games at launch for Quest. And the question I have for Gary, is there such a thing as too much? Because when I think of a launch, I think of maybe 25 games, 30 games. And I'm just wondering, like, let's say we get our Oculus Quest, right? And then bam, there's 50 games on the store. Like, I think it's going to be like you're a kid in a candy store and you're like, oh my God, there's 50 games here. What do I do? What do you think about maybe almost too many games? Or do you think Facebook, Oculus will figure this out and stagger things a little bit? Maybe it's over a launch window. I don't know.
I don't think 50 is enough when you take it in the context of these are VR games, which are smaller in scope. You can play through something like Super Hot VR, for example. I don't know exactly how long that took me to play through when I played it on PC, but it wasn't long, a couple of hours. So people are going to be rattling through these games relatively quickly. So I think taking in the context of the kinds of games that are going to be available, it makes sense that they need more titles. I suppose really more titles the better. And we go back to like the launch of the Oculus Go, which was using the ecosystem of Gear VR, and you had 1,000 titles. I think it said 1,000 titles or something like that. And there still didn't feel like there was enough content on the Oculus Go. No, not enough meaningful content anyway. So if they've got some good quality, high quality games on the Oculus Quest on launch, then that makes sense. And with these being smaller in scope games, I think that makes sense too. It's not a console launch. It's not like you're going to be playing through 15, 20-hour games on this. So I think in the context, it makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Okay, well, basically kind of our last story of in terms of like regular news stories here. Well, Vive Focus Plus with 6 DOF standalone controllers, that's going to release on April 15th. We found out the price for this, $800. Seems kind of crazy in a lot of ways, but we got to remember that there is this other market, the Asian market. And like some of these products that we have here might not go over there. So this will probably work pretty well over there. But I don't really have much of a comment on this. Does anybody else want to say anything about the Vive Focus Plus? Or we could probably touch on that when it actually comes out. Okay. other smaller news, and well, not so much a smaller news story. This was kind of a big news story when it first hit, and this is the Palmer Luckey thing. And I really like this story for several different reasons. But basically, I like Palmer Luckey's blog, is what I really like. You go to his blog, there's always an interesting little picture there that's at the front of his blog. But he had basically a blog post where he talks about, I can't use Rift S, and neither can you. And it became a thing for a day or two, where people started weighing in on this IPD thing and the drama around IPDs, and that 70% of the population is good here, but 30% gets totally boned. We don't need to get too deep into this, I don't think. But let's see, Chris, what do you think? First of all, what is your IPD, and what do you think is going to be the real range for people? Like, if somebody's looking at the Rift S, I think we found out, people that were at PAX, 58 millimeters to 72 millimeters is the software range, but the fixed IPD of the Rift S, I believe, is 64. Now, if you have a 58 millimeter IPD, or if you have a 72 millimeter IPD, you can use the Rift S and you can set the software adjustment there, but it might not fix all of it, right? So, I mean, they are kind of limiting this a little bit. What's your thoughts, Chris, on the IPD thing that's going on here with Rift S?
Yeah, well, I talked about this a bit last week. I think it was overblown, and having tried the headset, I feel like even more so, this whole IPD discussion is very overblown. I know my friend who went to PAX with me had an IPD of 58. He said it was way clearer than his current Rift just based on the screen and the lenses, and like he didn't even have any complaints really. And I know you have an IPD of 70. I don't think you had too many complaints. So I think Oculus is maybe doing software IPD better than other people like Sony, for example. I feel like their sweet spot is probably even less than something like Rift S for a fixed IPD range. So I still feel for those people who are lower or higher than that. That sucks a lot. Get a Valve Index, I guess, at this point. Like, I'm glad there's another option out there for them. But at the end of the day, I think Rift S probably is a good trade-off, and almost, I haven't had anybody actually try it say that it's too blurry. I haven't heard of that. So overall, it's probably fine.
Okay, I'm going to send it over to Steve, but before I do, one thing we got to remember, though, about the IPD thing is, like, you can try something for 15 minutes and you're not going to get eye strain and headaches and a lot of that. Like, that stuff kind of shows its ugly head later, you're 50 minutes in. Steve, any thoughts on the IPD drama that kind of went on earlier this week?
I mean, I agree with Palmer. Like, it's physical geometry and the placement of lenses. I don't see it where this just doesn't matter. That somehow Oculus found some magic solution and IPD adjustment no longer matters, and it just so conveniently coincides with them using a cheap single LCD panel and reduce cost efforts on a mechanical slider. If we're going way, way back in the day, remember when the Xbox One and the PS4 were announced? What was the head, I think, of Xbox before Phil Spencer? Don Mattingly or Don Matrick, something like that. He's like, we have a product for you. And I feel like this is a sort of that scenario. We have a product for you if you aren't 64 millimeters. That product is Valve Index. That sort of seems like what's happening here. Like, I think Oculus is wrong. I think it's apparent. Now, I think what a lot of people and a lot of confusion around it, and Anthony, you just mentioned it, is it's not like, if you have a 73 millimeter IPD and you put on a Rift S, that suddenly knives are going to protrude, stab you in the eye, and purple's going to become green and you're going to get kicked in the Johnson. What's going to happen is it's going to appear to be just fine. You may have a smaller sweet spot. You may have more edge distortion than someone with a 64 millimeter IPD. You may experience eye strain over a period of time. So I think saying it's just fine is sort of true, but at the same time also wrong. It's not just fine because you need to be at the focal point of the lens. A Fresnel lens focuses on affinity, and it focuses to a point. And if you're not on that point, that convergent point, then you are not at the peak position of that lens. And I think it's wrong. I understand why they've done what they've done, and I'm not necessarily saying that they shouldn't if they wanted to create a cheaper cost device. I'm just saying that it's not okay, and it's not like they've solved IPD. We have to accept that it's inferior, but it's a cost saving technique, and that may be okay for some products, but it's not like it's just okay to not have it straight up. Mechanical IPD adjustment is a thing of the past, and we don't need it going future. That's hogwash.
Yeah, to be clear, I don't think that. I think that it makes sense for the trade-offs they made for Rift S, but I agree it's like not acceptable for most people. Like you should have the ideal lens placement. I think everyone really should.
And maybe way in the future we just have lenses that are just so perfect all the way to the edge, and we get giant honking lenses like Pimax or something in every headset, and then IPD no longer matters and we can do it all with software. But I would be hard pressed to imagine that they could have evolved the Go lenses enough for it to not matter in the Rift S.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Gary, any thoughts on this?
Not really, no. Just to basically back up what Steve said, I think that the lack of IPD in the Rift S is a significant mistake overall. I don't know, this 70% figure that Palmer Luckey put out there, it seems to be disputed by some people, saying it's close to like 95% of the population could be okay with it. I don't know. Either way, it's a mistake not to include mechanical IPD adjustment, in my opinion.
Okay. One thing I'll say just real quick about this before we move on is like all this talk of IPD and eye strain and eye fatigue and all of this stuff. I've started to think back to like the last couple of years that I've been in VR, and with my IPD is like very similar to Palmer Luckey. And I've started thinking maybe none of these headsets have ever fit me exactly right, because I've always had this situation where I'll play VR for like 35 minutes, 45 minutes, and then I got to get out of there. And when I get out of there, I'm kind of worn out, my eyes are kind of like, ugh, and I talked to some other people about it, like Main Fan, and he's like, I have no eye fatigue at all. And then I'm like, Main Fan, what's your IPD? 64, perfect range, right? And so I've kind of been thinking, man, it would be beautiful to have a custom fitted HMD that is just absolutely flawless, and then what would that be like? Could I be in Skyrim for 3 hours? But let's go ahead and move on. Oh, quick though, we do have a couple of super chatters that are really kicking in for us. Chris B, thank you for the super chat. He's got an 81 millimeter IPD. Oh my goodness.
That's gotta be a
Jim
record.
Hall.
I've never heard of anyone with 81, so congratulations, Sharkhead.
Sharkhead. And then Jim Hall. Yeah, they were talking about, this is hilarious. Okay, first of all, Jim Hall, thank you so much for the super chat. We really appreciate it. But somebody on Reddit did a post that said, the VR 366 guy has a large IPD. Did anybody see this? This was like a long time ago, but somebody threw a post on there and I'm like, VR 366, come on, get it right. And then somebody that was in that thread was like, is this guy a cow? Is he a cow? He's got eyes on each side of his head like that. I'm like, oh man, I'm IPD challenged. Okay, but let's go ahead and move on, because you know what? We do have Chris in the building, and Chris was there. He was at PAX. He lived the dream that we would like to dream. And one of the news bits that we do have today is Stormlands. There was a Stormland, right? Stormland. Is it Stormlands or Stormland? Now I'm confused.
Stormland.
It's Stormland, right? Okay. Stormland, a brand new trailer for Stormland hit, a PAX East trailer, kind of a story trailer. Man, this game looks incredible. Now, Chris, you actually tried this game, I'm assuming, in a Rift S. So why don't you tell us about that, and then you can also go into all your other experiences there at PAX.
Yeah, did you try Stormland in Rift S, by the way?
Yeah,
You
I did.
right? Yeah, because I remember we talked about it last week. I mean, this game is fantastic, and especially the fact that it includes multiplayer, so you can play like through everything with your friends. Like that is going to be fantastic. That's like a similar thing to No Man's Sky, where I'm like, man, this is like, this is Oasis kind of stuff. Like this is awesome. So just when I saw the trailer, I'm like, I'm so hyped for PAX East. Oh my god, I gotta wait for this. And I waited 3.5 hours. I was like, I'm not gonna do Asgard's Wrath or any of that stuff. I'm gonna do Stormland. And it really is that good on the Rift S, and just obviously it'd be the same on Rift. Like you look at your hand controllers, and when they show it, it's still an old Rift controller, OG Rift controller, which is funny. But the environments are incredible. Everything feels good. Going on the slipstream where you're flying feels amazing. Gunplay is amazing. Like this game is perfect in my opinion. Like I really hope it has enough hours or lives up to the hype in that way in terms of the length of it, because it's fantastic. I can't say too much about it because I played it for like 10 minutes and I was so close to like doing some more cool stuff, and then they're like, we gotta take you out for the next person. I'm like, no. I was like trying to take my time to see if I could get more time with Rift S. But yeah, so Stormland, big thumbs up. That's gonna be huge. Rift S thoughts in general, like I'm way more positive on it than I was last week when I hadn't tried it. This is that kind of thing where everyone jumped on the bandwagon and was like, man, this thing sucks. But no one had actually tried it. And I know like you were pretty positive on it. Like it's a pretty okay device. And I think like, yeah, I tried to focus on some stuff that you weren't so sure of. So I was like tracking close up, and like, it's fine unless you're like 2 inches from the headset, then it gets a little buggy, but way better than Windows MR in that sense. Like you could definitely do a bow and arrow game or anything like that. Absolutely fine. Also, for me, black levels were actually very good, better than I expected they'd be. Like my Rift already has not, pitch blacks, because it has one of the screens is like a little gray, has a little gray effect on it. So this actually felt very similar to that. Like, it wasn't bad. It felt almost like my current Rift, maybe just a slight bit less dark, which is fine.
Yeah, just on that point, Chris, and because I feel like when I tried the Pimax, which is LCD screens as well, I felt like the black levels on that actually were perfectly fine, no problems at all. And coming from the Vive to the Rift, there is sort of the colours are a little bit more subdued in the Rift, even though it uses OLED. And going from the Rift to the Pimax, there was really not a lot of difference, honestly, when I tried that. So I don't know if if you could directly compare a current gen Rift to the Rift S, whether you'd notice too much of a difference between that or not. That would be an interesting thing to do, though, at least.
Yeah, for me, like I really preferred Rift S, because when it's pitch black on my Rift, I see some brighter bits, some darker bits. It's not a uniform pitch black, like at least on my Rift. The screen just isn't 100% uniform, but in the Rift S, like every pixel was the exact same color, and that was fantastic to me. Like I feel like that was more of an annoyance than the black levels on my Rift. So that made me very happy. Just that the screen feels uniform in both eyes. My Rift has this problem where one screen is slightly different color-wise. So it's always been a little off when there's a pitch black. This is good because it's the same screen, so it's uniform on both. I think LCD is an upgrade, man. I really do. Like, people liked OLED. OLED has been better for a long time, but Rift S at even at 80 hertz, like I didn't notice the 80 hertz. I did notice 72 hertz in the Quest, though. I noticed some flashing in the periphery on Quest a little bit more. But I'm happy with the trade-offs Rift S made, and if it can be basically the same price as current Rift, maybe a little bit more expensive for these upgrades, like the screen felt better than the Odyssey Plus to me, like just because of the sub-pixel layout. Like it was fantastic. And the Halo strap is finally one that works. It's not like the Odyssey Plus where it's like awful and you have to do all these mods to the headset. Like it just works. I could squish the headset into my face and get a bigger FOV than I probably have on my current Rift, because you can really smush it in. You can control that with the button. I think still biggest downside is lack of headphones and everything. that's for me. And obviously IPD adjustment for me, that's not a personal concern, but I know that's a big problem as well. But lenses are a huge upgrade. Screen is a huge upgrade. I was overall very happy with my short time I spent with Rift S. And then I guess touching in on Quest, I tried Dance Central. That's a new announcement at PAX East that got like revealed the day before by Harmonix, I think, right? So that game is pretty fun. There's a line and it was half Beat Saber and half this game, and literally no one wanted to play this game. Everyone was just waiting for this one Beat Saber station, which was hilarious. So I was like, I'll play Dance Central, and I skipped ahead 50 people because literally no one wanted to play it. So
how does that game work? How does, because I'm somewhat interested. I don't know if I'll play Dance Central a lot, but I'm interested. I know I'm not so young at a young 26 here that I don't remember the DDR craze. So what were the mechanics of Dance Central? Because it seemed like it would have to rely a lot on your hands rather than your feet, which is really what steered DDR.
Yeah, it's entirely hands. I mean, you will step with them, and I think it kind of interpolates when you turn your body certain ways. So basically, yeah, you just mirror whatever the person in front of you does. And I thought graphic wise it looked really good on the Quest. I'm sure it almost will look identical on PC. It's just that art style of it. But yeah, I played a Chainsmokers song. I will say this has some good songs. It's not like Beat Saber where it has all these really indie artists that no one's ever heard of. These are all really popular big songs on this title, which is nice. But yeah, you just try to kind of emulate the person the best you can, and you look like an idiot doing it. I'm sure this will be fun for parties and everything, but I only got to play one song. But yeah, it's fun. I don't think I'd buy it if it's more than $10, but if it's $10 or something, why not? As long as there's casting, if there's no casting, you're just gonna see someone looking like an idiot and you don't even know what they're doing. So yeah, I think it'll be an okay title. It's Beat Saber is still vastly preferred by everybody, I can tell. It's so weird being at PAX because you get to see this stuff. I know the Rift S line was 3.5 hours. The Quest line was half hour or less the entire time of the show, which is crazy to me. I thought everyone would be more hype on Quest, but I guess these gamers were or PC gamers, what's the Rift S like? Which that was something interesting I took away as well. But just talking about Quest, I know, Anthony has tried Quest before me, but it's as good as everyone says it is. It is amazing. I think the screens are amazing. They're actually pure black. When it was dark, there wasn't any gray or anything. Pitch black entirely. And the lenses are fantastic too. God rays on both is almost none. I came back to my Rift, and I was so disappointed looking at the current lenses. They are really maybe the worst part of the current Rift, in my opinion. But yeah, I was able to hear the headphones okay in the Quest, or hear the built-in audio, even though it was a super loud show floor. I couldn't hear if there's any bass because the show floor is really rumbling and everything. But yeah, so it was good. Quest was really, really good. I also played Shadow of the Gods, which is going to be a Quest launch title as well. That game felt really good. The crossbow is really fun to play around with, and I was testing tracking a lot in that one. I was passing things behind my back, and it works fine. You can see your hand track the whole way. So people gotta get over this tracking stuff. It's perfect.
Did you bring anything up to your face like a bow and arrow? When I think of that game, the fact that it's a crossbow and not a traditional bow and arrow, the crossbow, it's like a pistol. You just hold it out and pull the trigger. So did you do any bring it up to your face? And another one that comes to mind is Creed, when you got a block. Did you get any opportunity to test that? Because that's probably my biggest concern when it comes to both of the new Oculus headsets and their inside out tracking is I think they'll cover a good area, much better than the Windows MR, but I'm concerned about bringing things close to your face.
Yeah, that was a big thing I wanted to test. So I'd say, on Rift you can have your thing right in front of your headset, right? But on this, it's probably, as long as it's an inch or two out, it's fine, which is good for bow and arrows or anything. I was trying it both on Quest and on Rift S. I'd say Rift S is probably, you can get a little bit closer. But as long as you're not putting it right up to your face, it's fine. I think bow and arrow will be fine. I looked and like it's tracking good the entire way. Like I was really happy with Quest too. Like I was worried Quest would be worse with that lack of one extra camera, but no, it's good close up as well. So that eased some of my concerns there. I guess that's just what they decided was better for the game, because it's easier to aim that, at least in this game. But I think a bow and arrow game would be fine on both headsets. So happy about that. Quest was really comfortable. I'd say Rift S is more comfortable with the Halo strap personally. I know my friend who went with me absolutely hated Halo straps, even on PSVR, because he felt that they were kind of loose if you shook your head. But on Rift S, just something about how it was designed really well. So it really does stick to your face better, which was something I know he was concerned about. I personally really like PSVR. I feel like this is even more comfortable than that for me. So, I left PAX East being very happy and wanting both of these headsets very badly. Honestly, the thing I miss the most is the thumb rest on the original touch controllers, because they just don't exist anymore. Like I used to use this thumb rest all the time, just when I was doing social experiences and stuff, but it's gone. You just gotta get used to resting your finger on the buttons now. But yeah, it was great. So if anyone has any questions, let me know. But I'm really happy. I definitely want both of these now. Yeah.
So, Chris, one question I do have for you is on either the Rift S or Quest, did you get to see Pass Through or Pass Through Plus? And what was your thoughts on that?
I wish. I kept being like, hey, can I try Pass Through Plus real quick? They're like, no, we're not demoing that today. And then my friend Wes, like, they forgot to press confirm on the Guardian setup. So he said he saw Pass Through Plus, and I was so upset at him. I was so envious. But yeah, that would have been big. I can't believe they don't show that to people. I think it's huge. So I have to take your word for it on that. But just the thought of Pass Through Plus, I was like, yeah, this is going to be great.
Did you hear anybody, whether they be some of Oculus's contracted people running the demos or maybe any Oculus people themselves? I know they haven't announced anything, but to me it seems weird that Quest is now at its third trade show, if you count the announcement at OC5, GDC, and PAX. And we've known, from the very beginning, spring 2019, but it seems odd to me that they won't commit to a day at this point and say, okay, on this day, whatever. And then likewise, Rift S, I feel like they did kind of miss the boat with the March 28th opportunity, with PAX and everything. Were there any sort of rumblings or anything hinting at dates? Because I feel like Oculus has misstepped on potential release of one or both of these headsets.
Yeah, they need to date these things, because I kept asking every person I demo with, they'd be like, yeah, they're coming out spring 2019. I'm like, it is spring 2019. What are you talking about? But yeah, literally no information on that. I know, I was trying to pull some info on the battery life of Quest, and I haven't seen anyone replace the Quest, but they said what they had is they had one Quest in a cabinet charging, and then one Quest out here. For people's face, and it sounds like the Quest will charge quick enough that they could just swap them back and forth, but apparently they didn't have to much. I think she said they did once in the day, which that's pretty impressive, but who knows if these people are accurate or not. Hopefully Quest battery life is better than people thought, though.
I can speak to the battery life real quick, because there are some rumors that are going on out there. And when I was at GDC, I talked about this with Sebastian of MRTV. When I was at GDC, there were people wearing Oculus shirts, that were doing the demos, right? And I thought that the vast majority of them were hired by an outside company and they didn't really know much of anything. But this one guy, I asked him, I was like, I think someone else asked him, what was the battery life for Oculus Quest? And he's like, well, it kind of varies. But he said between 4 and 6 hours. And I was like, what? There's no way in hell, right? And so for the longest time, I thought, oh, this guy's just speaking out of his, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But then there is a rumor that, I don't know if it was like Voodoo DE or somebody was trying the Quest and said that he used it for 4 hours straight, and the battery still had 50% battery life, which that doesn't make sense. But maybe the battery life is a lot longer than any of us ever thought. So it might be pretty good.
Yeah. And I guess just touching on graphic fidelity, Beat Saber, almost identical to PC, other than the walls are a little less extravagant, but like for a Beat Saber machine, this is perfect. This thing is perfect. And all the graphics I thought were really good. Like even in Shadow of the Gods and Dance Central, which were the three things I tried Beat Saber briefly as well, just so I could get a comparison of the graphics of PC versus this. But everyone's going to be happy with this thing. I see nothing bad about Quest. Like I'm so excited. I think this is going to be huge. This thing has to be huge, just based on how like everything lives up to the expectations or exceeded it in my mind. So definitely day one purchase for me, and a lot of people have talked about Quest 2.
One little last thing I'll say, Chris, is like you've tried 3 experiences: Journey of the Gods, Beat Saber, and Dance Central. So you've got a sample of 3 different things. I think I tried 3 different things as well. And I think one of the nice things about being able to try multiple things in the Quest is like you'll see screenshots and you'll see videos, and it might not look that great, but when you get the headset on and you're in there and you've got vibrant colors and things moving around, and it's very solid and it works. Like I don't want to put words into your mouth, Chris, but did it kind of seem like that? Like you kind of got this overall view that these things are going to look better when you get the headset on your head and you're in there and you're in the experience.
Oh yeah, especially games like Shadow of the Gods, where you look at that on a screenshot or something, like, man, that's pretty basic, but just the fact that it's 3D like added so much. So I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So that's pretty much everything there from PAX. I kind of was surprised about the Oculus Quest line being so short. That was a little weird, but yeah. Okay, so what do we want to get into now? I guess we could go into a little bit of game discussion here. We're running pretty long, but we did want to talk briefly about Space Junkies. So who got a chance to try Space Junkies? Steve? Okay, Steve, why don't you go ahead and start that off?
Okay, give me a second. So I haven't played it much. So we had an issue with our press key where you got to have the right Uplay configuration. So I'm not trying to trigger you, Anthony. Let's leave that checked at the door. But Space Junkies, I still stand behind. It's a good game. I really, really like this game. It's a very good game. It's very fun. It's Quake. It feels good. Now, the problem I have with Space Junkies is that I don't have anything new to really say about it. It doesn't really seem to have changed since the not the very, very recent beta that they did last week, but since last fall. I don't see really any meaningful changes. Now, there's probably some efficiencies to the netcode and the matchmaking. I'm guessing some improvements there, and I guess maybe they worked a lot on the PlayStation VR version, but other than that, I don't really see any major changes. At the end of the game, at the end of the match, originally in the beta, you would have these gold coins that would rain down, and you would just be standing there. Now they've kind of moved it so that you're in a small lobby with the other people that you play the match with, and you can do gestures and be silly and all that. So I don't know what else to really say. It is a good game. The locomotion feels good. It's you face aim for your locomotion. You get multiple guns. The maps, the environments are colorful. You have varied weapon types. The feel of this game is very different. It's not Echo Combat, but the feeling that I get when playing Space Junkies, it gives me a similar feeling of this just feels good. It's smooth. It's natural. It's fluid. It's fun. They spent a lot of time optimizing and getting the gameplay pretty well dialed in. So I think the game is great. The problem I think I have, and this was a concern that I had going back last fall, is the price. It's $39.99, which in and of itself, $39.99 for a game, you can get a ton of value out of this. I could see it as being like to the person that loves playing online shooters and stuff, like you're going to like your Onwards or your War Dust or your Contractors. And I don't put Space Junkies in that same sort of militaristic sim style. This is more arcadey, more fun, space, shoot them up, blast them up. So I think it's a good augment for those people that like to play those games. You play Contractors or you play something like Space Junkies, depending on your mood and how you're feeling. So I think the $39.99 price is okay, giving the value that you could get, the big red flag here for the $39.99 makes me wonder about longevity of the multiplayer community. Now, if there was some way that I could say that you were guaranteed that a year from now you'll jump into Space Junkies and you'll have no issues finding a match, then I'd say $39.99 is okay. But I'm not saying it's okay because I don't know if 3 months from now it's a deserted ghost town, which at 39 is a lot. Is a bummer when you can't play online because it is a multiplayer only game. So it's kind of, I'm torn on my recommendation. It in of itself is a very fun game, and I like it a lot. And I'll find that I think myself and my son really likes this game a lot. I think we'll come back to this frequently in the same way I do Beat Saber. There's sometimes, I come here up into my office and I'm like, okay, I'm going to play some VR right now. And let me just do a couple songs of Beat Saber. I don't play for an hour or anything crazy like that. I might play for 10 minutes, knock a couple songs out. I can see Space Junkies being similar. I'm going to jump into Space Junkies for 20 minutes and then I'm done. And I want to keep coming back to it because I really like it. I just worry about the longevity. And I believe, although I can't confirm, maybe people in chat can, that it's cross-play with PlayStation VR. So those type of things really help for continuing the multiplayer community, staying with the game and there always being enough people to play with. With that, I also have a code to give away for Steam for Space Junkies, and I'll throw it up here in a little bit. But I know, Anthony, I think you've played it, right, here recently?
Yeah. What I'll say about it is, honestly, I have nothing bad to say about Space Junkies. The polish, everything about it was great. The only negative I can say is the price. And the price, what I kind of would want personally is if they had a little single player story thing that you kind of went through for maybe 2.5 hours. If that was added on to what is already existing here, I would probably be perfectly fine with the price. But yeah, I feel like the price is quite high, but the polish, some people in chat, for example, Fluke Rogi is saying, such a shame it's only 4 players. That killed it for me. If it wants to be Quake and Zero G, it needs 16 players with the ability to just drop into a game without waiting about in a lobby. I actually loved the fact that it's only 2-on-2, because for me, if I get into a 16 player thing, it's kind of chaotic and there's a lot going on, where for me, I enjoyed Megalith as well on PSVR when they had an open beta for that, because it was a 2-on-2 thing. It's me and another guy, and I felt like it's just easier when you only got 2 people in there. It's not quite as chaotic. But see, I'm not the target market for these games. But Space Junkies, I would probably rather play Space Junkies than War Dust or Contractors or a lot of these other games, because I like the fact that it's fun and fast, and it's just there's not heavy stakes that are going on here. You're just getting into a fun thing. And the polish, everything seemed to work good. Yeah, you are in a lobby, but there's no jank. There's no, when I'm playing Space Junkies, the times I played it, there was no it's loading and it's waiting and I'm stuck and half of my eyeballs over here and all the little weird things that go on. Everything was butter smooth, polished up the yin yang, very dialed in. What it does exceptionally well. But I know a lot of people, they might go into it and be like, this is real simple. This is kind of a multiplayer game from 10 years ago. We've moved on beyond this. But see, I'm not that guy. So for me, it's fine. I really liked what I played with it. Steve, Gary or Chris, did either of you guys get a chance to play it, or any thoughts?
I didn't.
Yeah, I didn't get to. I played it in the beta and I thought it was fantastic. So I'm assuming it's more of the same, just more polished, like Steve said. So I look forward to getting back into that one.
Okay. Now, Steve, were there any other games that you wanted to bring up or anything else before we get out of here? Okay. Okay, so yeah, I guess that will go ahead and do it for our show. This, of course, has been episode 119 of VR Roundtable. First of all, I would like to thank everybody in chat that has joined us in chat. Thanks to the super chatters that helped us out with some donations. That's absolutely awesome. We also, wait, somebody's muted. Am I muted?
Oh, I was muted. Damn it. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. So anyway, I'll start that over again here. Okay, that's going to go ahead and do it for episode 119 of our show. Thanks so much to everybody in chat. Thanks to the super chatters, everything that's going on there. Now I'm a little bit discombobulated by the muting there. But thanks so much for watching our show. We really appreciate it if you would go ahead and hit the like button. We know there's lots of people that watch our show that aren't subscribed. Go ahead and subscribe. It's not going to hurt you too much. We only come at you like once a week, so we're not going to hammer you too bad with too many things popping up all the time. So go ahead and click on the bell indicator there. That way you'll be notified about any of the stuff that we do. We'd also like to say thank you to anybody that leaves us a review on iTunes. We are also an audio only podcast as well that you can find on your various podcasting services. I'm back at work. I'm back in my cubicle and I love podcasts and there's not enough of them. And I kind of wish I wasn't on this podcast because then it would be something exciting for me to listen to while I'm at work. Unfortunately, I'm on it and I don't want to hear it again. So I'm kind of stuck. But like tomorrow when I go to work, I'm going to be listening to the F Reality podcast. And so it's awesome to have these podcasts. So if you are an iTunes listener or Stitcher Radio or any of these other things, give us a review. It really helps us out in a major way for discoverability, new people finding us, and all those sorts of things. So thank you so much, everybody. It's exciting. VR is here again. We've got a second wave of VR. It's looking like an incredible spring and an early summer. So stick with us. We're going to be here on a regular basis talking about all this stuff. And thanks so much for tuning in and watching us. And that'll go ahead and do it. We'll see you guys next time. Have a wonderful weekend. Take it easy.
One thing when you say sticking here on a regular basis, just a scheduling thing. So next week, Gary's going to be at, was it Resd, the show in London on the Sunday. And I'm also going to be in Ireland. So unless there's major breaking news that comes out maybe later in the week or something, we'll probably be skipping next weekend. We haven't 100% confirmed, but I wanted to go ahead and throw that out there because if we don't do a show, a lot of people ask us, why aren't you doing a show? So this will be why, because me nor Gary will be available. We'll see you next time.
Okay, take it easy, guys.
Bye.
Bye.